oftentimes the raw use of AI, certainly in the world of learning and education, is not effective.
That's where I think most of enterprises don't get it right or get disappointed with results.
Have the safety and security harnesses around it. Make sure it's you're doing it responsibly. It's safe. It's grounded in who you are and your content, but get it out there.
It's just not technology, but it's all about people and how you make sure they can adopt.
Hi, and welcome. I'm Louise Matsakis, Senior Business Editor at Wired. We're here at the World Economic Forum in Davos, surrounded by leaders from some of the world's largest organizations, who are all here to explore the most critical challenges and opportunities in the age of enterprise AI. AI innovation is accelerating faster than ever, and the role of the Chief Technology Officer is expanding. CTOs are now a central driver of business strategy, partnerships, acquisitions, and enterprise-wide AI transformation. As AI evolves from experimental tools into increasingly more autonomous agentic systems, a new CTO playbook is emerging. One focused on scaling responsibly while navigating trust, governance, and real-world value. Two organizations helping define this new CTO playbook are Pearson, one of the world's largest education and learning companies, and HCLTech, a leading global technology firm. Last year, they announced a multi-year strategic partnership to accelerate the transformation of learning skills and workforce readiness in an AI-driven world. I'm joined today by David Treat, Chief Technology Officer at Pearson, and Vijay Guntur, Chief Technology Officer at HCLTech. Thank you both for being here. So David, my first question is for you. We hear a lot of talk about AI reskilling. How do you approach reskilling a workforce to successfully deploy AI?
It's a huge question, so I'm going to touch a couple pieces of it. I think one is it's a whole new way of thinking. I think the past where we've had incredible new tech innovation, and then we think about how to train humans on it. I think we have to totally rethink that to be much more systems oriented around the humans and the technology, and think through how do we implement with that from the start. So human centric. And obviously, the learning curve associated with new technology is only getting shorter duration, higher amplitude. It's a huge lift, and that's what we're really focused on: is human-centric learning to make it AI and humans.
Now, to Vijay, what does the Chief Technology Officer role look like when investing in new technologies and new ways to upskill their teams? How can they ensure their AI investments deliver ROI as rapidly as possible?
I think today when you think about AI investments, they need to be talked about in different time frames. Some of the AI investments that are being put together today in terms of capital are longer term investments. And think about data centers. Last year, $1 trillion went into putting data centers together with AI and GPU capability. Those are going to give returns in the longer term. Whether then you think about process changes that you need to make, not just tweak what you have and put automation into it, but rethink the process and then use agentic or whatever AI technology is to make it more efficient. Those gains will be very imminent. You can expect them to have a return on investments in a very shorter time frame. The payback I've seen, the shortest has been within a year to 18 months. You can get payback on rethink about your business processes and then use AI to get them right and deliver them right. And like David said, right, it's just not about the technology. You then have to take your people along. You have to train them on the new processes and new ways of doing things. And that is where you really start to get benefits. It's just not technology, but it's all about how you take people and how you make sure they can adopt.
So I think you've touched on this a little bit, but this is a question for both of you. Once you've decided, okay, we want to bring AI into an organization, what are some of the technologies that you think about? How should organizations think about where to apply AI and automation?
I think we have a real advantage in the past decade plus worth of work around process automation and workflow in that space, because of course you have to understand the context of the workflow that you're looking to automate. So that using that as the foundation to think about where can automation be best applied, work from that. The second thing then is how do you quickly assess what is a a fast changing set of AI capabilities as we move from business logic that we encoded in a very deterministic way to now taking advantage of AI reasoning. And so it does, as I said a few minutes ago, really then immediately you have to think with both the humans and the workflow that you now deeply understand and what AI can do all together to then be able to drive forward. So you need to have fantastic data foundations. You need to know not only the capabilities of what the AI AI tools that you're using can do, and be confident in that, be able to assess it and prove it, which is one of the things we're focused on. But same thing with the humans. How do we understand the human skills and how do we match worker to work? So we've done that for a long time with humans. How do I put the right person on the right job? Now we need to be able to do that in a much more data grounded way. AI and human together, matching human and agent and workflow. And how do we measure that? How do we monitor that? How do we help people build those skills more quickly? How do we constantly learn? So it turns into a whole system of continuous learning, human centric, AI enabled.
It sounds like you're almost saying that one of the first things you need to invest in is really getting people on board and really, making sure you totally understand the process. Hearing you talk, it all sounds relatively straightforward. But in practice, many AI initiatives fail to deliver the results organizations expect. Why is that?
That's where I think most of enterprises don't get it right or get disappointed with results. Is they start with a laundry list of about 200 or 150 use cases that they've brought together from different parts of the organization and say, okay, now we're going to solve this. I think that approach is going to be very incorrect and will disappoint on the results. So while you can get all the tech and the data infrastructure and all that cleaned up, right, that is fundamental. But choosing where to invest and where you can build credibility within the organization is very important. So I believe instead of starting with 200, you should go with a dozen or less use cases that are really, really impactful and can make a difference to an organization. And I think that will create a lot more interest and a lot more belief and helps the change through. And so you have to invest in your people. You have to prioritize correctly what's useful to the company, and then invest in making sure you have solutions that can solve that particular problem.
It sounds like both of you are touching a lot on the need for focus, right? This is a general use technology, but it's really important to choose like what is the actual part of your company or your use cases that matter the most, because you could automate lots of things that maybe don't need to be automated or they shouldn't be the priority, and you're really missing where the business use is the most important. That brings me to something I want to ask you, Vijay, which is that in a lot of companies, the R&D departments or their innovation labs have these incredible breakthroughs that they come up with, but then that's almost kind of where the hard work actually starts. So once you've chosen the right use cases, the next challenge is getting innovation to scale. How do you actually move innovations from R&D and scale them across an organization?
All right. So if you think about innovation that's coming out of any R&D lab, I'll give you an example. We had an innovation that came out of an R&D lab, which is to integrate something like SAP with, what's happening on the manufacturing floor. And this is to integrate physical AI with SAP, right? Now, this is an innovation that has taken us some time to put it together. But if you want now wider adoption, you need to first educate people on how to use this innovation and how to take it to customers. So our sales team needs to be trained at scale, and then we also need to train our people who are going to use this innovation in their work. So two things need to happen. One is the innovation needs to happen at a fast pace so that you can get more of it. Second, it needs to scale. The only way it can scale is if you can educate our teams on how to take that innovation to the market. And some of it is in-person training, but a large part of it is ability to use learning systems to scale up and have ability to have those learning systems connected to people so that they can have conversations on what that innovation is. This is just a small example of something that we really built just now for people to use. But there are many such examples of what is built. It takes a long time to get to the market and get to the business. The way to shorten that is to use learning mechanisms and methodologies by which people can absorb this quickly. And this pace of change is really what makes the difference, because what we did, for example, a full training over a 4-month period for about 1,000 of our salespeople. And I think right now what we talked to them about and what was relevant 4 months back is less relevant today. So there's something else much more relevant. So we need to be able to get almost like a real-time education system and platform in place for people to learn new things as they come out of the R&D labs. And then, of course, engage with the businesses so that they can really take them to the market.
That makes a lot of sense, but not every innovation succeeds. How do you manage the risks there and make sure that the innovations actually deliver business impact?
First of all, R&D is experimental. We must know that. So it is inherently risky, right? Not everything that you put into R&D is going to come out of the pipeline is a product, right? So if you accept that, then the faster you can get to reduce that risk, the better it is, which means business has to give impact into what R&D is producing. So first thing is R&D can't be in isolation. It has to be closer to the business, and business and R&D need to be much more talking to each other for that to happen. That's a big do. I think you should allow for experimentation and not expect everything to succeed. That's another thing that you want to invest in. But the few that succeed are going to be really impactful. So those are some of the principles I would think of how to manage the risk of the R&D dollars and how to get success out of it.
Can you talk us through some of the AI successes and learnings you've experienced and what lessons you've learned?
It's really enabled us to engage with our customers in a whole new way, and we didn't start internally. We're doing a lot of internal work now with to use AI to change the nature of our internal workflows, but we were unafraid and raced straight to engaging with customers because the feedback then that we got, if AI is the new UI, the data that we're collecting from our customers' interactions with our AI study tools, with our AI enablement of teachers to help them teach differently, we're now getting such a rich set of information back. We've then been able to be on a rapid development cycle to then respond to what their actual needs are, and that is just paid dividends, in a huge way. So we've gotten some great feedback. 85% of the students that use our study prep tools in higher ed are getting the grade they want or better. We're seeing a 7% increase in actual grades and performance when they're getting a scaffolded learning science-based AI interaction that pairs with the professor's intent, which pairs with their content. So really about getting these tools in the context of where they're being applied, getting the data to get the feedback for how they're being used. I'm slightly disappointed because I have a college-age daughter, but like the other data point is our study tools are getting the highest hit rates between 1 and 3 a.m. I wish they were sleeping more, but but the feedback was students need help exactly when the professors are not around to give it. And so now they can, right? It can be guided by what the professor wants. It can be tuned to it. We're finding the same thing in enterprise. So our enterprise business is our fastest growing. We're putting tools in the context of the flow of work and getting feedback. And so we launched a few weeks ago a communication coach that is listening to our meetings and then giving everyone feedback that is geared towards their level, their role, their context. I was shocked at how much it's helping me. I'm getting feedback after a meeting that's saying, Dave, you could have achieved a consensus in a different way. You ignored this input. You could have presented this more concisely. It's helping me. And so really, I couldn't agree more with what Vijay said, and just adding the notion of get it out there. Like have the safety and security harnesses around it. Make sure it's you're doing it responsibly. It's safe. It's grounded in who you are and your content, but get it out there. Just get the interaction going, get the feedback going. That's the way to really accelerate and get to valuable implementation.
In a future where AI is deeply embedded in learning and work, how should organizations approach training, engagement, and skill development?
The notion we have to meet people where they are. The notion I think we've had two things that have been broken. One is, okay, I'm going to pencil this down. I'm going to stop what I'm doing and I'm going to go take a training course. Like people just are trying to get through it as quickly as they can. They're not actually engaging their brain. And if you're not getting the brain to struggle, you're not going to learn. So that notion of a separate educational learning experience isn't as effective. So we want to be in the flow. Can we push micro learning experiences into the flow of how people are using the platforms they're using? Have AI notice, hey, you seem to be struggling with this concept. Watch this 2-minute video. This might actually help you get done what we think you're trying to get done. Get the feedback, get the interaction. And so a deeply interactive, engagement learning experience embedded in the flow of the work that people are doing, grounded in the context of who they are, and then the tracking. Is someone actually building skill? And as they're building skill, are you collecting that data in the form of credentials that they're holding, and it's moving with them, even maybe between organizations, or we want it to be between organizations. We're the world's largest issuers of educational credentials. We've issued now over 130 million. We do it for 18 of the top 20 tech platforms. That data is incredibly rich and is used by partners and customers like HCL to then be able to match worker to work and help someone envision a career path and to know what to learn next. And so the more we can meet people where they are, give them personalized learning experiences in the flow of their work, and track their progress to then help them unlock their next opportunity. To me, that's where we're going.
Do you think a decade from now, are there any new types of credentials that you're going to predict?
I think 10 days from now. No, this space is moving incredibly fast. And multiple innovation waves are coming together to bring it to life. It's not just AI, it's AI and tokenization of credentials and wallet infrastructure. And we talked about, we made reference to physical AI, and so it's going to be a multiple innovation waves that consistently come together and move faster and faster.
I think what I'm hearing from both of you, and what I really appreciate about this conversation, is the emphasis on continuous learning and keeping an ear close to the ground and really figuring out what are your people thinking about, what do they need to know, who do they need to talk to. And I think that brings me to my next question, which is also for both of you. Equity is a major concern in both education and workforce transformation. Based on your experience, how can AI be used responsibly to improve learning outcomes rather than just giving answers?
I believe we have to be able to cross some barriers of learning. Like, a lot of the content today is pretty much 2 or 3 languages in the world: Spanish, English, Mandarin. So if I think about how do we reach a wider audience, there is now enough technology that is there with AI enabled that can deal with language. One of the strengths of AI is to be able to deal with languages. So if you can reach a much more wider population and language barrier is lowered, I think that is fundamental to be able to get learning to become more spread, less less differentiating, right, and more equitable.
The ability to personalize learning also means you can reach people in whatever context, and so that's wildly powerful. We have to really think about the access to the technology, but it's becoming so ubiquitously present. If you have a smartphone, you can get access, and so that's wonderful. But we also need to be really thoughtful around the impact and the intent. Oftentimes the raw use of AI, certainly in the world of learning and education, is not effective. It can't be a teleportation tool, right? We can't think of learning as like, okay, well, I'm just going to ask the AI tool and it's going to give me the answer. Then you're not learning, right? It actually needs to be grounded in a learning science-based approach, a Socratic method, all of the concepts that we know work to actually engage the brain and help people actually learn are crucial. And so applying a responsible structure to how do we learn all of these new skills? So reaching more people, reaching them more effectively, and making sure that it's all grounded in very responsible practices that have the learning science at the heart of them is key.
I think that's a great note to end on. Thank you both so much for being with me today.